Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. I'll begin this video by saying that it's been a while since I've been able to record a new one, but here I am. And what's today's topic? Peter Safran's and James Gunn's new DCU movie entitled Superman, which just opened this weekend. But before proceeding, if you're enjoying this video, please consider pressing the like button, and if you'd like to see more of my content, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. And I want to convey my deepest thanks and appreciation to everyone who has subscribed. So first of all, let's talk about the movie's production budget, because Peter Safran's and James Gunn's Superman movie wasn't cheap. Some early reports claimed that the production budget was as high as $363.8 million, but James Gunn refuted that. Warner Bros. Discovery then claimed that the movie's production budget is $225 million, but I tend to doubt that it's that low, given that's the same reported production budget for 2013's Man of Steel, which launched the DCEU back in 2013. And when you take inflation into account, Warner Bros. Discovery is effectively attempting to claim that Peter Safran's and James Gunn's Superman was cheaper to produce than 2013's Man of Steel, which I find difficult to believe. But I will point out that while the reported $225 million production budget is within one standard deviation of the overall average production budget for all DCEU and DCU movies, it's well above that overall average. And if this newest Superman movie did actually cost more than $300 million, it would definitely be more than one standard deviation above the overall average. Now, for those of you who have watched my previous videos where I talk about movie costs, then you'll know that there's rarely any reporting on what a movie's marketing budget is. But that's not actually the case with Superman. The marketing budget for this movie is reportedly estimated to be somewhere between $150 million to $200 million, which is a hefty budget. And that's believable because I have seen a lot of advertising for this movie, and you probably have too. So the question becomes, how much money does Peter Safran's and James Gunn's newest cinematic vision of Superman need to earn at the box office in order to break even? Using the reported production budget of $225 million and the estimated marketing budget of $150 million to $200 million, when we add that range to the production budget and multiply by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, that gives us an estimated break-even point range of $750 million to $850 million, which is quite a bit of money. And with that estimated break-even point range, I can actually calculate what the opening weekend box office should be in order for the movie to break even. Using the overall average weekly drop of 38.51% with a standard deviation of 9.9%, based on the earnings of the previous 15 DC movies, that gives us a range of 28.61% to 48.41% as a range of possible average weekly drops for Superman. But before I say what the predicted opening weekend box office is for the movie, what I will say is that it creates a possible range of domestic shares from 57.5% to 67.5%. In other words, there's not that much interest outside of the US to see Superman, which is unusual given that the domestic share for 2013's Man of Steel was 43.57%. So there's a definite decline in international interest in this character, which could be the result of several possible factors, such as disapprovals with casting choices, unappealing previews, burnout on superhero movies in general, or quite possibly a consequence to negative international perceptions of the United States due to the current administration's trade and tariff wars. And who knows, It could be that tariffs may have raised the cost of ticket prices for US movies outside of the US. But regardless of the reasons, that entire range of domestic shares is bad, not only because it's well over 50%, it's not just one standard deviation above the franchise average domestic share of 39.51%, it's more than 2 standard deviations above. And 2 standard deviations above the franchise average domestic share of 39.51% is 55.26%. The DCEU movie that currently has the highest domestic share of all time is 2023's Blue Beetle at 55.85%. And Blue Beetle, as you probably well remember, was a huge box office flop. It was also the lowest grossing DCEU movie globally of all time. But Superman won't become the lowest grossing movie. However, using those ranges of possible average weekly drops and possible domestic shares means that Superman, in order to eventually break even at the global box office, should have a domestic opening weekend box office somewhere in the range of $123.4 million to $277.8 million. That minimum value is based on the movie only needing to earn $750 million to break even, with the lowest possible average weekly drop and lowest possible domestic share. But the maximum value is based on the movie needing to earn $850 million to break even, with the highest possible average weekly drop and highest possible domestic share from those 2 ranges. The midpoint of that range would be a domestic opening weekend box office of $200.6 million, which would be based on the movie needing to earn $800 million to break even, using the franchise average weekly drop and domestic share. So what we could say is that if the movie earns $200.6 million domestically during its opening weekend, that will give it a good chance of being able to break even, but there won't be that much of a profit. But is the movie predicted to earn anywhere near $200.6 million domestically during its opening weekend? No. Currently, the predicted range is between $115 million to $135 million, which straddles the low end of what I said the movie needs to minimally earn domestically in order for it to have a chance of being able to break even. Worldwide, it's predicted to earn around $200 million, which is rather low. Which would also mean that the movie's average weekly drop and domestic share will have to be as low as possible in order for the movie to have any chance of being able to break even. So before I even show you what I am currently projecting for the movie's final domestic and global box office earnings, I can say right now that the movie's chances of breaking even don't look good. So using the $125 million midpoint of the movie's predicted domestic opening weekend box office earnings, and the range of possible average weekly drops from 28.61% to 48.41%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $258.2 million at the low end, $324.5 million at the mid-range, and $435.9 million at the upper end. Then by using the midpoint domestic share of 62.5%, which is derived from the movie's predicted worldwide opening weekend box office earnings of $200 million, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $413.1 million at the low end, $519.3 million at the mid-range, and $697.4 million at the upper end. And that entire range is below the estimated break-even point range of $750 million to $850 million. So as of now, it's not looking good for Superman 2 being able to break even. But we'll see how much money it earns this weekend both domestically and worldwide, from which I'll be able to revise my projected final box office earnings. Please let me know in the comments below if you are planning to see Superman or if you have already seen it, and what you thought about the movie as well as my projections. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to each and every one of you who has subscribed to support this channel. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, and Blue Sky by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.